Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our weekly live business and marketing talk show. Tonight, we're going to have a very, very special show. It's not about marketing, it's not about business, but it's all about advocate, and it's all about getting the word out. So it's actually going to talk about the bigger strategies about how to help people who are in need. And so we have a very special guest, and he is Afghanistan advocate, and he is going to help the people who are coming from Afghanistan and to get their word out and to reach out as well. And welcome to the show, Keith.
Wow, thank you. What an honor. What an honor it is to be here. I've watched this show almost every Thursday, and now to be part of it is thrilling. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone who are joining us tonight. And you will be so thrilled about the story that you're going to hear. And then hopefully, tonight's show can touch as many people's lives as possible. So I am very excited, but I don't say this lightly because I know there is going to be some heavy stuff coming out. We'll see. So to start with, Keith, tell us a little bit about you and why you become Afghanistan advocate.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm always happy to talk about myself and about Afghanistan, but let's go back a little bit before that. I've always been a world citizen. My father was a career Army officer. We traveled all over the world as a young family. I've got two brothers and two sisters, and none of us were born in the same state, and one wasn't born in the same country. So travel and living in foreign countries has always been a large part of my life. And even after I grew up and went to school, I was in the military, fought a war in Vietnam, stationed in Spain, Germany, Turkey. I was married in Switzerland, worked for the government in United Kingdom, and I worked in China for 3 years. So I think I counted one time that I've lived in 9 countries, and in one of those countries, I've lived in 9 states. So just had a broad opportunity to see the world.
Mm-hmm.
After a 40-year career in Silicon Valley of being a senior executive, I was lucky enough to work at the right company at the right time and was able to retire relatively early. And was looking for something to do. What do I do with the rest of my life? And I had a friend from the Vietnam era that we sort of stayed in touch at a distant way, but we stayed in touch. And I got a message from him, and he says, Keith, after I got out of the Navy, I joined the US State Department, and I'm currently in Baghdad, Iraq, in the middle of the war, and I've been given a job assignment to create a youth program. And would I help him? And we were both Eagle Scouts for the Scout program, and so he created the youth program in Iraq around scouting. And of course, I was there to help him. He started with 8 children in 2004. And when the US left Iraq in 2010, or the majority of the soldiers, we had 150,000. And I like to repeat that number because sometimes people think they didn't hear it correctly. 150,000 girls and boys in a youth program in the middle of the war. So phenomenal opportunity. My name when you do something, you're part of something like that, your name gets on a list. I came home, back to the Bay Area with my family for about 2 years. And then I got an invitation from the president of Afghanistan and a lady named Marnie Gustafson, who said, we heard what you guys did in Iraq. We'd like to try to do the same thing in Afghanistan. So in 2012, I got on an airplane and I flew to Kabul, Afghanistan, and started to live another part of my life, which has taken up a major portion of my life for the last 9 years. So that's really what got me there, really what got me there. So long answer to a short question, but yeah, from being world traveler to I personally have been in 4 combat zones over a 15-year period, and 2 of them dealt with building youth programs, Iraq and Afghanistan.
What a phenomenal experience. I think not many people would take this bold movement to move outside their comfort zone, right? And especially the country like Afghanistan. And I think most people are kind of having this natural fear of going there, and let alone doing the things that you did in the past 9 years, right?
Yeah,
And I believe that it's not an easy journey. So tell us what it's like living in Afghanistan.
sure. Uh, the fear of going to Afghanistan or any combat zone is a realistic fear. I tell people sometimes there's a reason I have white hair, and it's probably all those years in combat zones. So yeah, living in a combat zone and living in a third world country like Afghanistan, not everybody has had an opportunity to do that. So let me kind of tell you a little bit about what it's like. Well, first of all, I got off the airplane in Kabul and I took a taxi cab to in the direction of my compound. And immediately, as soon as we came outside of the gates at the airport, I saw devastation. I saw hunger. I saw poverty. I saw fear, and I just realized I was now in another world. And so let me kind of take you through a couple of those things and tell you a tiny bit about them, because telling you a tiny bit can no way show the impact of some of these things, of what it's like to be there. First of all, let me talk about corruption. Afghanistan is one of the three most corrupt countries in the world, and it was part of everybody's life every time. And eventually it was the downfall of the country. We sometimes think that the Taliban had a stronger army and bullets is what won the war for them, but it wasn't. It's that the Afghan government was so corrupt that in the end, they just took a few $1,000s in free tickets to leave the country, and the Taliban took over. So the corruption permeated everything we did. You had to pay money if you wanted a telephone. You had to pay money. It was called bakshish. You had to pay bakshish, whatever you wanted, and the government employees were constantly expecting money for something. The other thing is poverty. Afghanistan is the poorest country in Asia, and it showed up everywhere. It shows up in hunger. It shows up in the street people. It shows up in youth, in children working. One of the saddest things is to go down the street and see these kids selling gum, and their fantasy is to make more than $1 a day so they can have food. So we talked about the corruption. We talked about the poverty. The third thing that you realize right away, because we're accustomed to living in first world countries that everybody reads and writes in a language of some kind. That's not the case in Afghanistan. The literacy rate is one of the lowest in the world. And so only about 30% of the men can read and write, and only about 15% of the women can read and write. And that shows up all the time. I remember I'd only been there a couple of months, and I was taking a taxi ride through Kabul, and my taxi driver committed some kind of an offense that the policeman didn't like. Well, he can't write a ticket. He doesn't know how to write, and he can't read a manual. So what he does is he drags the taxi driver out of the car seat and beats him with a baton equivalent to how severe he thought the crime had been, and then let the taxi driver crawl back to the car and get in and drive me to my destination. But literacy came up everywhere. With our youth program, when we tried to train people, we couldn't just send them a training manual. We couldn't just send them a newsletter. We couldn't just mail them some instructions. It meant we had to get into a taxi or into a bus or onto an airplane. All of those are very dangerous, and travel to the destination to do face-to-face communication with everybody. And so the corruption, poverty, and literacy permeated our life. The other thing that permeates not so much our life, but the lives of the children, is landmines. Landmines have been spread in that country for 40 to 50 years, and they're even more so now. 41,000, and let me repeat that number, 41,000 Afghan civilians have been killed by landmines. They're out herding their sheep. The children are out playing games. Either they step on a mine or they pick up a mine thinking it's a toy. Bingo, bam, and they've either been killed or they've lost a limb. And I'm going to mention one other. I never thought of this, and I've only learned about it in the last 9 years. Afghanistan has been impacted more than any other country by climate change. Whoever would have guessed? I mean, if you asked me to list 10 countries that are impacted by climate change, Afghanistan would not have been one of them, but it is. And for a number of reasons. One is droughts. 3 years, no rain. They rely exclusively on agriculture. Their agricultural land has shrunk from 80% of the country down to about 18% of the country. So corruption, poverty, literacy, landmines, climate change are all part of living in a place like Afghanistan. And I didn't even mention security. I didn't even mention the fact that the war is going on. But I hope I don't ruin anybody's dinner, but I'd say if there's a shit list somewhere, Afghanistan is on it.
Yeah, it seems like it's a lot to work on in Afghanistan. Are you there, Keith?
Yes.
Oh, I thought we just lost you. So it seems like it's a lot going on in Afghanistan. Wow. So I really respect so much and admire that your services there in Afghanistan and making an impact, in a world like that. And I know it cannot be one person's effort. It needs the whole world to raise up a world like Afghanistan.
Yeah,
So tell us your view of being a female in Afghanistan. I think a lot of female advocates, and they would be very interested in hearing more about that part.
Yeah. I think you phrased the question correctly. What's my view? I'm not a woman. I can't tell you what it's like to be a woman, but I can tell you what I've observed. I can tell you what I've read. I can tell you what people have shared with me. And so let me kind of go through some of those things that I've learned. One is totally unequal education. Either women are not allowed to go to school, or if they are allowed to go to school, they just don't get the same education that boys do. Many times the schools are crowded, and so there's a morning class and an afternoon class. The morning class are always boys. The afternoon class are girls. The instructors are not as good quality. Many times I've been out in the villages. If the classes are starting at the same time, the boys are inside the school, the girls are outside the school. So it just shows up in everything and about the unequal and or no education for the girls. And then uneducated, they become susceptible to all kinds of problems related to the community. Another big problem is childhood marriage. Without education, they're quickly married off. 17% are married by the time they're 15 years old. Think of those numbers. 17% of the female population are married by the time they're 15. And invariably, they have children months after they've been married. So these are girls that are 16 or maybe 17 years old now with babies of their own. They're babies with babies. There are also a lot of harassment on the street. No woman would ever dare walk down the street by themselves. If they do, they go with groups. And even then, if I see 5, 10, 15 women walking the streets, there's constant harassment, insults. I've even seen men pick up rocks and throw at them because the religious beliefs feel that women should always be accompanied by a family member, a male family member. Also legally, Afghanistan has the laws to protect women, but unfortunately they're not enforced or they're ignored. And so it takes a lot more than just laws, but it takes enforcement. And this is just not happening there. Limited medical
as
care.
a female myself, it sounds really scary. It literally like you don't really have freedom in that country as a female.
No.
And then you don't have any right in that country. And I think they're just going the wrong circles since women play such a critical role in education, in the family foundations as well, right? And if they don't get well respected and well education, like good education, how how the next generations are gonna are gonna be raised up, right? So
Exactly.
yeah, ah, it's horrible, I would say, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell you, being there, it's worse than you may imagine. Even right now, when I watch the Taliban and I follow the Taliban, they're much more focused on limiting the rights of women than they are on governing the country. They're utilizing all of their time and all of their money restricting women's rights, and little of their money and little of their time trying to prevent hunger and prepare for the winter that's coming there. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's demoralizing. I mean, even for me,
it's
and it is for them.
it's really sad. It's really sad.
Yeah,
Um, so let's talk about the current refugee situation. Would you like to break down the current situation for us?
sure. I've tried to paint a picture as best I can in how did I get here. I told about the scout program in Iraq and Afghanistan. I tried to give a little idea of what life is like in Afghanistan and talking about corruption and poverty and literacy and landmines and climate change. And as best I could, um, tell you about women's rights. But what's happening now is this refugee problem, and that's on everybody's mind. You can't watch a TV news program, you can't read a newspaper without being aware of this refugee problem. Let's kind of break it down as you've asked me to do. First of all, what we're seeing on the news now are the refugees coming to America, but a much larger piece of the pie are the refugees that are still in Afghanistan or still in the area. As a result of all the things I talked about, the terrible treatment of women, the illiteracy, the poverty, the climate change, 2.2 million Afghans have escaped to surrounding countries. 2.2 million. I don't know what the population is of San Jose, or San Francisco, but we may be talking numbers that entire cities have now moved out of Afghanistan into Iran and Pakistan, which really aren't very friendly countries and aren't very wealthy countries, are not able to take them. So the largest pie of refugees are the 2.2 million that have moved into Iran and Afghanistan. The next biggest piece of the pie, as I break it down, are internally displaced as a result of climate change, as a result of poverty, as a result of failed agricultural crops. They've moved from their tiny villages to larger cities and hoping to survive and get a job or something. So almost 700,000, they're called IDPs, internally displaced people, have moved from one part of the country to the other. So as we look at this pie, 2.2 million have moved to Afghanistan, Iran and Pakistan. 700,000 have been moved inside. And now we're going to talk about the ones which have gone overseas as a result of the Taliban. It's about 124,000 people were evacuated in a period of about 4 or 5 days. We all saw the desperation, the chaos at the Kabul airport. But actually, I mean, that's the bad part of it. But the good part of it is it's the largest evacuation in the history of mankind. At no other time have we been able to evacuate 125,000 people in 3 or 4 days. So to kind of look where they went, 125,000 people, about half of them are coming to the United States. Another large portion have gone to the United Kingdom, Australia, Germany. In all, about 90 countries have accepted refugees either temporarily or permanently. So yeah, the biggest piece is coming to America, the second biggest, United Kingdom, Germany, Australia. But 90 countries around the world are getting some kind of refugees, either sometimes it's only a family or two. So I've given out a lot of numbers, so let's kind of look at them again. 2.2 million have escaped to Iran and Pakistan. 700,000 have moved internally, and 700,000, those are all refugees camps. Those are all trying to feed these people. These are all doctors that have to take care of these people. And then 125,000 have escaped Afghanistan to foreign countries. And we've got about half of that, about 65,000 here in the United States. And let me kind of tell you the path that they take when they come to the United States. First of all, they're loaded on military airplanes in Kabul at the airport. Up until recently, there have been some commercial airplanes added recently, but the pictures we all remember was masses of people loaded on military planes. They're taking to their very first staging location, which is in Germany and in Qatar, where they're tested for COVID, they're tested for measles, they're tested for other contagious diseases, they're tested for fake documentation. They're making sure that the family members are truly all family members. And that's where the very first gateway is, in Germany and in Qatar. Actually, now almost 100% of them are going through Qatar. So first is the airport, Kabul airport. Second is Qatar or Germany, primarily Qatar. And then the ones that are coming to America fly into Virginia. And there's another level of testing at the Dulles airport, just outside of Washington, D.C. And once again, they're tested for communicable diseases, tested to check their documentation, visas, passports, authorizing documents, and things like that. So it's a very laborious process. They're already hungry, they're already starved, they've already left all of their assets and their families behind, and now they're confronting all of these checkpoints on the way.
So tell us more about the refugees that come into the U.S. and California, and especially the Bay Area.
I will. And I'm going to mention one more thing between that. So when they leave the Dulles, they don't directly go to the States. They go there's 8 military bases in the United States where was another staging location. And they're going to stay there at those 8 military bases until the cities are ready for them. So when the ones which are coming to the Bay Area, they're going to stay at military bases until housing is available, until schools are available, until reception organizations are available, hospitalization or medical clinics are available, greeting committees, translators. So we're not going to see refugees in the Bay Area until there's an infrastructure prepared for them. So we may have refugees living at some of these military bases for months. I mean, my worst fear is it could be a year because there's just no place for them to go. But they clear the military base, and now they're going to go to their final home. And every state in the union is getting some refugees. We here in California are going to be getting 5,800 of them. 5,800 refugees are going to be coming to California. And they're going to be, a lot of people don't realize that the largest Afghan population outside of Afghanistan is in Fremont, California. So a lot of them are going to be going to Fremont. Other large Afghan populations are in Sacramento. A lot of them are going to be going to Sacramento. A third large Afghan population center is in San Diego, in Southern California. So a lot of them are going to be going there. And there's a tremendous effort happening in each one of those areas. I get flyers and event notices all the time on translation services, setting up medical appointments, taking children to schools, and all of these things to introduce a new life to these refugees. So then they're going to come to the Bay Area. They may settle on the East Bay. They may settle in Sacramento. Housing has got to be available, so it's going to mean that somehow somebody's going to have to pay for apartments until they've got jobs. Many of them are being housed in hotels until they can get jobs. We've got to be able to provide food for them. And we certainly don't want to think that they're getting some kind of a luxury pass. Everything is minimum. It's low-cost apartments, the lowest-cost hotels, the most inexpensive food, and the hours and hours and hours of a lot of free volunteers that are working with them to get them settled into their new community.
Mm-hmm.
So of the 5,800 that are coming to California, I'm guessing that it maybe certainly more than half will be coming to the Bay Area and Sacramento. And a lot of effort has gone into preparing for their arrival. I know cities have been putting on webinars, planning committees are happening, training is happening for volunteers, and so on like that. So, and then we need to know there's things that like you and I can be volunteers and how we can help.
Mm-hmm. So that's actually coming to my next question. Tell us how we can help as a community.
Yeah, it's going to rely a lot on volunteers. Yes, there's some paid professionals, but it's going to rely a lot on volunteers like you and me and the people watching this show today.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look at each one of the stages that I talked about and say how you can help. Remember back in Kabul, we've got 700,000 internally displaced refugees. Remember, we've got 2.2 million that have escaped the surrounding countries that are living in refugee camps. They need help. Mm-hmm. They need food. They need blankets. They need medical care, just like anybody. And they're refugee camps, and they're underfunded, poor cesspools of contagious diseases. So if that's part of the world you want to try to help, the International Rescue Committee is doing a lot there. The United Nations has done a phenomenal job of doing what they can to help these refugees on a shoestring budget. The countries are very reluctant to donate any more money to the United Nations. And so they've got a shoestring budget, and they're trying to deal with those literally millions of refugees there. So UNHCR, the Afghan Red Crescent Society, which is the equivalent of the Red Cross, make a donation. They need the money. CARE International, we've all heard of CARE International. They're doing their best to support Afghan refugees inside the country of Afghanistan and in the refugee camps. And then UNICEF. UNICEF is the United Nations organization that takes care of children. So if your thing is wanting to be able to help the desperate 2.2 million refugees that are still there, those are the organizations to help with. Now, the ones that are coming to the United States, there's another opportunity to help. So if you, I've already mentioned the International Rescue Committee. They've been chosen primarily to help refugees in all 50 states. And they're doing their best, but once again, understaffed, underpaid, under-budgeted. So if there's any way you want to volunteer at one of those 8 military camps, or if you want to be able to donate money, or every one of these organizations have their own Amazon gift list. So just go on to Amazon, type in CARE, and you'll see the things that they need. It may be simple things like baby bottles and space heaters or toys or soccer balls, but you can buy them and have them sent directly to, Amazon will automatically send them directly to the organization that requested them. Another good thing for people that have a pen and pencil and want to write this down, the federal government has created a website. It's called welcome.us, welcome.us. And you can go to that website, and there's only 2 buttons on the first page. I am a refugee and I want to help. So I'm assuming that the people watching this is, I want to help. So they would click the I want to help button, and it would take you to all of the opportunities for financial donations, time donations, experience donations, skills donations. And in today's world, you don't have to be there to offer a skill. You can dial in on a telephone or Zoom in on internet and be able to help these poor refugees. So welcome.us for anybody that wants to help in the United States. Now let's get down to the Bay Area. There are several local organizations. I find Rotary clubs, women's organizations, scout organizations, schools all want to help. And if your local school is doing something and collecting warm clothes or collecting money or collecting soccer balls or something like that, that's your opportunity to help and donate. I do refer local people to one organization. It's called the Afghan Coalition. The Afghan Coalition is the oldest benevolent organizations for Afghans in the United States. They're in Fremont. I think they've been there over 25 years and less than 30 years. And yeah, I could give you a phone number, but I'm not in an email address, but I would just suggest do a Google search for Afghan Coalition. You'll be connected with them, and they'll be able to direct you to organizations, or if you want to help them. I know that once again, they're almost 100% volunteer staff, and they're as close as Fremont. And once they can come in and help direct your talents, your skill, your time, your money to the appropriate direction. And then there's individuals. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Nancy. I didn't mean to talk over you. I was going to add one more thing, but
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to ask things that how we can get more connected with you and
sure.
Yeah, questions like that. But go ahead.
I was going to add one more thing. So I've tried to explain, if you want to help in Afghanistan, huge part of the pie, the most refugees, they could use your help badly. If you want to help globally, remember over 90 countries are receiving refugees. I've tried to explain their International Rescue Committee. If you just want to, or not just, but if you want to help refugees in all 50 states, welcome.us. And if you want to help just in the Bay Area, the Afghan Coalition or your local organizations. Here's some things you can do as an individual. The difference between being a resident and being a refugee is having a job. I wrote a little saying, I've got it on a piece of paper in front of me here. The moment a refugee gets a job is the moment they stop being a refugee. So if you've got some kind of job opportunity that you can put these one person to work, that's when they become a contributing member of our community. So here's some things you can do. One is, many of them are extremely talented. The first ones to leave the country were the doctors, were the lawyers, were the engineers, the educated elite. They're sitting there right now in a hotel room somewhere, probably in Fremont or Sacramento or some other city in the Bay Area, crying for a job. But their resumes don't match the American resume style. So the very least you can do is sit in your own house, get an Afghan resume, which will be in English, by the way. Majority of them speak English, very good English, and rewrite it for the American style. And so that doctor, that lawyer, that engineer, that school teacher can hand a resume over to someone at a local company and get a job. So number one is you can help rewrite resumes. Number two is job training. Maybe they don't have the exact skills required for jobs here in Silicon Valley, but with a little bit of training, you can take that electrical engineer and bring them current with the job requirements for Silicon Valley. So as an individual, you can do some job training. And then if you're the manager or the president or the CEO of a company, offer them a job. You're going to find they're the best employee you'll ever have. And I think good jobs is anything related to construction. I know living here in Silicon Valley, construction, there's a huge shortage in construction workers. These Afghans are perfectly for that job. Food service. Every Afghan I've ever known knows how to cook deliciously. If you need somebody in fast food restaurants or specialty restaurants, those Afghans would love that job. Assembly work in Silicon Valley and clerical work. So those are all things that you as an individual can do. Help rewrite resumes, train job skills, and offer them a job because they'll be the best employee you've ever had.
Thank you so much, Keith. And thank you for being such a strong voice for the Afghanistan refugees and for the world. And I think our audience tonight, this is, heavy stuff, but also we can tell that people need more people like, the world need more people like you who are passionate to be the voice for them and to make this world a better place. So any final thoughts that you want to share with our community?
Sure. Of course, your show, as I've watched it, as I said, almost every week, is all about digital marketing and so on. And this effort and any other effort for any country or any need all come down to digital marketing. My Facebook page, I think, is up there. I can't see the screen so closely right now, but I've got over 8,000 followers. In fact, I think when I checked tonight before the show, I had over 8,100. And that means there's over 8,000 people that are following what's happening in Afghanistan. And every single one of them may be either need help or willing to give help. So digital marketing works the same way for charities as it does for small businesses, it does for large businesses. So I rely heavily on Facebook, LinkedIn, all of the other social media opportunities to promote the charitable needs for Afghanistan. The same works the other way around. I know that a lot of my followers are Afghans. That's how they stay connected with the Western world. That's how they reach out for help. That's how they, if they need I know in order to travel to the United States, they need a sponsor. Well, they'll look at my list and they'll find somebody that fits the profile, that may be a school teacher or maybe living in a part of the country, and they'll reach out to them. So digital marketing works both ways and has become a huge asset. Nancy and I were talking a little bit before the show started, and I made the point, the Taliban have taken over Afghanistan twice. 20 years ago, they took over Afghanistan, and they were able to convince the people that their propaganda was the way of life. That's not the case anymore. Today, almost every Afghan family has a smartphone, and they can go in and watch CNN, they can watch German TV, they can watch BBC, and they can find out the news and what's happening and realize that what they're being fed by the Taliban is just propaganda. And so it really is going to liberate them and create democracy in a country that wasn't possible just 20 years ago. So digital marketing not just brings more customers into your restaurant, but is going to democratize the world. So, yeah, I rely on it a lot.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I think that's the most efficient way, actually, for Afghanistan to get their word out, right? Get their word out and to reach out as well. And that's actually the most efficient and the easiest way for them to, right?
Yeah, I agree. And they can do it. I mean, you've made the point several times about how inexpensive it is. And they certainly don't have huge marketing budgets. None of these organizations, they're going to, if it's a choice between putting an advertisement on Facebook and feeding 100 more people dinner, they're going to feed the 100 more people.
Yeah,
and so they have to rely exclusively on free social media advertising, and they've got to become experts at it.
Yeah, they have to yeah, but it really depends on like the vision, right? If you like if you focus on digital marketing, if I mean if they focus more on digital marketing, and they're able to feed more people, to do more with the help from the world, right? It really, but it's just a matter of time. But I agree with you, there is an urgency for them to to feed people first, and to make sure that people are are still alive and living in this chaotic world. Thank you for sharing all the information and your life stories with us, and I do appreciate that. And so, for those of you, if you want to, reach out to Keith and to get more information, or just be there and be a help, and then just feel free to reach out to him, and then connect him on Facebook. Yeah, just do what you can and to make this world a better place.
Yeah.
And
Thank you,
thank you
Nancy.
so much, Keith. And thank you for everyone who are joining us tonight. And have a wonderful, wonderful Thursday night. And thank you, Keith. Have a great weekend.
Thank you very much, Nancy. I look forward to sharing coffee with you soon.
Of course, for sure. Um,
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. I will see you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Bye.